Have you ever wished you could be unbreakable? To walk through life without the weight of pain, without the sting of criticism, without the ache of rejection or the devastation of betrayal. Perhaps you've imagined what it would feel like to be untouchable, not in a physical sense, but emotionally, mentally. To smile genuinely without forcing it. To stand tall without secretly trembling inside. And maybe you are tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of showing up every day with a brave face while quietly crumbling behind the mask of composure. You've learned how to carry yourself with strength, how to keep moving forward, how to function in a demanding world, but not how to feel safe in your own vulnerability. You have become an expert at surviving, but surviving is not the same as living. This longing to be untouchable is not unique to our modern world. Across history, cultures have dreamt of it too. The Stoics of ancient Rome taught that the highest virtue was apatheia, to remain unmoved by fortune, insult, or loss. In Japan, the samurai class cultivated bushido, a code where showing fear or emotional weakness was considered worse than death. Even medieval kings and queens draped themselves in crowns and heavy robes, symbols meant to disguise their human fragility with the illusion of divine invulnerability. Humanity has always been haunted by the desire to appear unshaken, to project control, even when chaos storms within. But this video is not another speech urging you to push through, to harden yourself, or to pretend you are made of stone. No. This is something else. This is an invitation to stop running, to stop performing strength, and instead to meet yourself fully, honestly, even painfully. Because real strength does not come from avoiding pain. It comes from moving through it with awareness, with gentleness, with radical honesty. Think of the great cathedrals of Europe. Their stained glass windows only reveal their colors when the light passes through them. In the same way, your wounds only reveal their meaning when you allow light, attention, compassion to shine through them. So stay. Don't scroll away. Just for a few minutes, stay with me. Because maybe, just maybe, this is the moment where your healing begins. Perhaps something deep inside you has been waiting for this, for words that do not demand you to be more, do more, fix yourself, or change, but instead words that remind you it is okay to feel. It is okay to break. It is okay to be exactly where you are. Have you ever longed to be immune to the world? To stop feeling the subtle stabs of being misunderstood, left out, or not chosen? To no longer be shaken by what people say or don't say, by who stays, who leaves, or the unbearable silence that lingers between words? Perhaps you've fantasized about that version of you, the one who no longer flinches, who has finally outgrown the ache. But you haven't. Not yet. And that's okay. You see, this exhaustion you feel, it may not come from your job, your studies, or your endless responsibilities. It comes from something heavier, the pressure to always appear okay, to keep up the image of someone who has it all together, who never needs help, who is always strong. Maybe all you've wanted is a break, a moment where it's safe to be soft, to be messy, to not have all the answers. And here is the truth. The more you try to escape pain, the more it owns you. The more you numb it, avoid it, hide it, the more power it gains over your life. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is a messenger. And ignoring it does not make it disappear. It only makes it louder, whispering in the dark corners of your mind. This isn't weakness. This is what it means to be human. The difference is that some people are simply better at pretending. They laugh loud enough to drown out the cries within. They smile so brightly that no one suspects the fractures beneath. But that's not healing. That's survival. Carl Jung, the pioneer of depth psychology, once said, "We are not what happened to us. We are what we choose to become." And within that choice, the choice to stop running, to stop armoring yourself, and to start feeling, lies true strength. True strength is not found in building walls around your heart or in pretending you don't care. It's not about becoming cold or detached. Real power doesn't look like perfection. It looks like presence. Presence even when the wound is raw. Presence even when the tears come uninvited. Presence even when you're still figuring it all out. History shows us this too. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor often remembered as the philosopher king. His writings and meditations were not the reflections of a man without pain. They were the diary of someone learning to face it with presence. Think of Joan of Arc, a teenage girl standing before kings and soldiers, trembling yet unwavering, because she chose to feel her fear fully and still move forward. Real courage has always looked less like armor and more like the raw honesty of facing the storm within. And maybe that is what your soul has been waiting for, not another layer of steel, not another mask to hide behind, but the permission to stand unarmored, to let the trembling show, and to finally meet yourself exactly as you are. You've learned to live with a mask, a face the world believes is strong, composed, unshakable. You know how to hold yourself upright, to smile politely, to say, "I'm fine," even when you are unraveling inside. It is a performance so polished that even those closest to you may not notice the cracks, but deep down you do. Every night when the curtain falls and the stage lights dim, you feel the weight of the role you've been playing. This performance of strength is not unique to you. It is a script written across centuries of human history. In the courts of ancient Byzantium, officials learned to bow, flatter, and conceal their true feelings. Survival depended on masks. In Victorian England, the culture of stiff upper lip demanded silence in the face of grief, war, or betrayal. Even today, we inherit these traditions. Strength equated with silence, dignity confused with emotional exile. And so, like an actor, you step onto the stage of daily life. You keep going, keep functioning, keep presenting an image of control. But inside, you may be trembling, because survival is not the same as living. Survival is mechanical. It demands routine, compliance, endurance. Living, however, living requires presence, vulnerability, truth. And the mask you wear, while it protects you, also imprisons you. Think of the gladiators of Rome. To the cheering crowds, they appeared as unbreakable warriors. But historians remind us that behind their helmets, many were slaves forced into combat, terrified, longing for freedom. Their armor both shielded and suffocated them. In much the same way, your invisible armor, the persona you've carefully built, hides your vulnerability, but at the cost of suffocating your true self. Perhaps you've grown so used to the mask that you've forgotten where it ends and you begin. You've worn it in job interviews, in family gatherings, in quiet moments with friends. It has helped you navigate the sharp edges of the world. But now, in the quiet of your own heart, you wonder, who am I without it? The mask demands energy. Every smile that conceals a tear, every joke that hides sorrow, every "I'm okay when you're not," it all drains you. And over time, the cost is enormous. No empire can endlessly expand without exhausting its resources. No heart can endlessly pretend without collapse. Carl Jung warned of this danger. He spoke of the persona, the mask we show to society, and cautioned that when we identify too closely with it, we risk forgetting our deeper essence. The persona is necessary. It allows us to function, to adapt, to belong. But when the mask becomes the only face we know, our inner world begins to starve. Have you felt this? That strange hollowness, even in moments where everything looks fine from the outside. That exhaustion that doesn't come from work or lack of sleep, but from constantly performing strength. It is the fatigue of carrying a self that is not fully yours. And yet, there is courage even in noticing this truth. To recognize the mask is the first step to loosening it. To see that you are more than the role you've played, more than the mask you've worn, is to remember the humanity you've long silenced. Look at the statues of pharaohs in Egypt. Tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly serene. Their faces carved to appear godlike, eternal, untouched by human fragility. But archaeologists, digging deeper, often find notes, letters, fragments of confession, moments where these rulers doubted, feared, grieved. Even those who ruled as gods wore masks, and even they, in private, longed to lay them down. You too carry this longing, the longing not just to survive another day, but to live. To live without always performing, without always concealing, without the endless pressure to be invulnerable. What would it feel like, just once, to take off the mask, to sit with someone, or even alone, and say the words you've swallowed? I'm tired, I'm hurting, I'm not okay. And what if strength was not pretending, but confessing? What if real dignity was not silence, but honesty? The world teaches us to admire the unbreakable, but history whispers another truth. Those who dare to show their cracks often leave the deepest mark. The poets who bled on the page, the prophets who wept openly, the leaders who confessed doubt, these are the ones remembered not for their masks, but for their humanity. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is the invitation before you now. Not to throw away the mask entirely, for society will always ask for one, but to loosen its grip, to remember that behind the armor is someone still breathing, still yearning, still alive. Here's a truth rarely spoken aloud. The more you try to escape pain, the more it owns you. The more you numb it and avoid it, suppress it, the more power it gains. Pain doesn't vanish when ignored. It grows louder, echoing in the silent corners of your mind. We're often told to fight pain, to harden against it. But what if pain is not your enemy? What if pain is, in fact, a messenger, a signal carrying truths you've been unwilling to face? Consider this. In the Buddhist tradition, suffering is not something to be eradicated, but understood. The first noble truth declares that life contains suffering, but the wisdom lies in transforming it into insight, not fleeing from it. Among indigenous tribes of North America, young initiates endured vision quests, days alone without food or water, not as punishment, but as initiation. Their boining was a sacred doorway to wisdom. And even in Christianity, the crucifixion of Christ was framed not merely as torment, but as a path to redemption. Across cultures, pain has always carried a deeper message, a hidden invitation. Yet modern society tells us otherwise. Advertisements promise quick fixes. Don't feel pain. Erase it. Pills. Distractions. Endless streams of entertainment, all designed to help you forget. But forgetting is not healing. It is avoidance disguised as relief. Like covering a festering wound with silk, the infection spreads beneath the beauty. Carl Jung knew this paradox well. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." What he meant was simple. Running from pain keeps you chained to it. Only by facing it directly, acknowledging it, listening to it, can you uncover the wisdom it contains. Think of the ancient Spartans. Their entire culture was built on endurance, on facing pain with open eyes. A Spartan boy training in the agoge might hold a fox hidden beneath his cloak, allowing it to claw and bite into his flesh rather than reveal weakness. Brutal, yes, but symbolic of a deeper truth. They understood pain was inevitable, and what mattered was how one responded to it. The lesson is not to glorify suffering, but to recognize that denying pain does not remove it. It only disguises it. And perhaps you've seen this in your own life. The breakup you thought you'd buried resurfaces years later when a silence in a new relationship touches that same old wound. The rejection from childhood, being left out, overlooked, returns with brutal clarity when a colleague ignores your contribution. It was never the event itself that hurt most. It was the echo it awakened. Pain is the messenger knocking, saying, "This part of you still longs to be healed." The tragedy is that many people never stop to listen. They cover pain with work, with busyness, with perfection. They drink it away, scroll it away, laugh it away. But no matter how far you run, the messenger waits at the door. In the myths of ancient Greece, Hermes was both the trickster and the messenger of the gods. He delivered messages that could not be ignored, even if they were unwanted. Pain is much the same. It comes carrying truth, often disguised in suffering, demanding you open the letter sealed in its hands. And so the question is not, how do I escape pain, but what is pain trying to tell me? For some, it whispers, slow down. For others, you cannot keep carrying this alone. For many, there is a wound in you that has never been acknowledged. Pain is not here to break you. It is here to show you where you are still divided from yourself, where your heart still longs to be whole. This is why the bravest thing you can do is not to armor yourself further, but to listen. To sit quietly with your discomfort and ask it, why are you here? What are you showing me? Because pain ignored is a prison, but pain understood, pain honored, becomes a guide, and perhaps for the first time you are ready to listen. Maybe you've walked through life with the quiet suspicion that everyone else has a secret manual, that somehow other people know how to be happy, how to be resilient, how to move through heartbreak without shattering. You've compared your insides, the doubts, the storms, the sleepless nights, to other people's outsides, polished and presentable. And in doing so, you've convinced yourself that something must be wrong with you. This prison of comparison is one of the oldest cages humanity has built. In ancient Athens, envy was so corrosive that citizens believed the gods themselves punished success with nemesis. Divine retribution meant to humble the fortunate. In the Middle Ages, peasants toiled in fields, staring at castles on the horizon, wondering why some were born to labor, while others feasted in abundance. And in our modern world, the castle has become the glowing rectangle in our palms. Social media feeds where everyone else seems thinner, richer, happier, freer. Comparison has changed its stage, but never its power. But here is the cruelest trick of comparison. It makes you forget that what you see is not the truth. You see the crown, but not the weight of it. You see the smile, but not the trembling behind it. Just as medieval painters painted kings in radiant gold, but never showed their sleepless nights, so too do people curate their lives for display, hiding the chaos just beyond the frame. And then there is you, the one who feels too deeply, too emotional, too sensitive. You've probably been told this at some point. You're overreacting. You take things too personally. You're too much. As though your very capacity to feel were a flaw to be corrected. But what if it isn't? What if this very sensitivity, this depth, this tenderness that leaves you so exposed is not your weakness, but your gift? Think of the great artists and mystics. Rumi, the Sufi poet, wrote verses that still move hearts centuries later, because he felt so deeply that he could not help but turn his wounds into words. Van Gogh, though tormented, painted skies that still pulse with life and longing. Their sensitivity, the very thing that made life heavier for them, also became the bridge by which countless others found beauty, comfort, truth. Carl Jung understood this too. He believed that the traits we most often see as flaws, sensitivity, intensity, vulnerability, are in fact the raw material of transformation. They are the open door through which the unconscious speaks. To numb them, to bury them, is to silence the very instrument through which your soul tries to reach you. And perhaps that is what comparison blinds you from seeing. You measure your depth against someone else's surface, your pain against their mask, and you declare yourself inferior. But in truth, your sensitivity may be the superpower this hardened world most desperately needs. History confirms it. Empires were built on stone and iron, but civilizations endured through their poets, their storytellers, their healers, the ones who felt too much. When the battles were over and the ashes cooled, it was the sensitive ones who rebuilt meaning, who gave voice to the pain others could not name. Sensitivity has always been a form of resilience, disguised as fragility. So maybe the question is not, why am I not like them? But rather, why do I keep trying to be? Because what if your way, your tender, feeling, aching way, is not a defect to be corrected, but the very path through which your strength will emerge? Comparison is a prison. But the key has always been in your hands, to stop measuring your worth against illusions, to stop dimming your light because others fear its brightness, to stop believing that you are too much when in reality you are exactly enough. What hurts you most is rarely the event itself. A rejection, a silence, a betrayal. They cut deeply, yes, but not only because of what happened in the moment. They hurt because they strike an older wound, one that has lived in you long before this day. Think back. The friend who forgot to include you echoes the child who was left behind on the playground. The colleague who dismissed your idea awakens the memory of parents who didn't listen. The partner who walks away reopens the ancient wound of abandonment you thought time had buried. The wound was always there. The present moment is only the spark that lights it again. This is why two people can experience the same situation but respond in entirely different ways. For one, a passing criticism is shrugged off. For another, it lingers for days, twisting into self-doubt. It isn't the words themselves that hold power. It's the place inside you where they land. Carl Jung understood this with piercing clarity. He taught that what remains unresolved within us doesn't simply disappear. Instead, it hides in the unconscious, waiting for life to stir it awake. He wrote that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. In other words, the world outside keeps pressing the same bruise until you finally stop running and look at it. But this pattern is not just personal. It is collective. Entire nations carry wounds that resurface again and again. After wars, generations inherit unspoken grief. The children of Holocaust survivors often described feeling a sorrow they could not name, a silence heavier than words. In Vietnam, families still carry echoes of loss from a conflict decades past, shaping how love, fear, and survival are passed down. Trauma doesn't vanish with time. It travels, disguised, until it is finally faced. History reminds us, when old wounds are not acknowledged, they repeat. Civil wars erupt in cycles. Families replay the same broken patterns. Individuals find themselves in relationship after relationship where the same wound is touched. It feels like bad luck, but it is really memory, unhealed, unresolved, asking again to be seen. And maybe you've felt it, that sense of déjà vu in pain. Different people, different situations, but the same sting, the same ache, the same collapse into a story you thought you'd outgrown. But here lies the paradox. This is not punishment. It is invitation. Pain is saying, here, this is the place inside you that still needs your presence. So long as you keep blaming the outside world, the partner, the friend, the circumstance, you remain a prisoner of the echo. But the moment you turn inward, the moment you ask, what is this touching inside of me? You begin to reclaim power. Ancient cultures understood this truth. In rites of passage, young people were often guided to confront the past, to face ancestral wounds before stepping into adulthood. The Lakota people sent their youth into the wilderness to fast and dream, not to punish them, but to ensure they would not carry hidden shadows into their future. The Greeks told of Orestes haunted by the Furies until he finally faced the ancestral curse head-on. Even myths remind us, what is unhealed will hunt us until we turn to meet it. And so perhaps the rejection, the silence, the betrayal you face now is not just a cruel twist of fate. Perhaps it is the echo of something older knocking on your heart once more. And this time, you have the chance not to run, not to bury it, but to listen. Because your power does not lie in controlling what others say or do. It lies in understanding what has been touched within you, and choosing at last to begin healing it. Awakening rarely arrives in comfort. It doesn't knock politely at your door with a clear invitation. It breaks in. It shatters the glass you thought was solid, the illusions you thought were certain. Awakening comes disguised as loss, confusion, collapse, the sudden unraveling of everything you clung to for safety. One day, you thought you knew who you were, what your life meant, where you were going. And then, everything falls apart. The job you depended on disappears. The relationship you built your future on crumbles. The beliefs that once guided you no longer fit. And in that moment, you feel as though the ground beneath your feet has been pulled away. But here is the paradox. Collapse is not the end. It is the beginning. The fall of Rome looked like catastrophe to those who lived it, streets abandoned, armies broken, cities burned. But historians now know that through those ruins, seeds of rebirth were sown. Monasteries preserving knowledge, small kingdoms experimenting with new forms of law, artists planting the roots of what would one day become the Renaissance. What felt like the end was in truth a transformation. Your life mirrors this pattern. When everything you trusted begins to crack, it feels unbearable. But through those cracks, light enters. Leonard Cohen once wrote, "There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." And Jung would say, those cracks are the openings through which your unconscious begins to speak. In myths across the world, transformation is always preceded by descent. The Greek goddess Persephone falls into the underworld before she can emerge as queen. The Sumerian goddess Inanna descends through 7 gates, stripped of all her garments before she finds renewal. Even Christ, in Christian tradition, dies and descends into darkness before resurrection. Collapse, descent, shattering, these are not detours. They are the path. And maybe you know this firsthand. That night when grief left you gasping for breath. That season when you felt hollowed out by despair. That moment when everything you believed was solid dissolved like sand through your hands. You thought it was the end. Yet somehow you are still here. You are. And in that survival, in that trembling continuation, something inside you shifted. You saw that you could lose almost everything and still breathe. This is what awakening feels like, unbearable and liberating all at once. It is the recognition that control was always a mirage, that your carefully constructed identity was never permanent. Awakening is not about finding new certainties. It is about learning to live without them, to let life be unstable, mysterious, alive. Carl Jung called these moments individuation crises, the sudden breaking apart of the self you thought you were, so that the deeper self can finally emerge. He compared it to alchemy, the medieval art of turning lead into gold. The lead is your suffering, your collapse, your confusion. The gold is the self that rises on the other side, truer, rawer, whole. And if you feel right now that your life is crumbling, that you are being undone, then perhaps, just perhaps, you are standing at that threshold. The crack is opening, the light is waiting. Awakening is not gentle. It doesn't wait until you are ready. It doesn't arrive wrapped in clarity or peace. It comes disguised as chaos. But if you can endure the breaking, if you can resist the urge to run back to old illusions, then you will discover the secret all mystics, poets, and survivors eventually learn. The collapse was never destruction. It was initiation. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." These words carry a weight that can shake the foundations of how we understand ourselves. Because so much of who you are, the choices you make, the reactions that flare inside you, the fears that paralyze you, are not born in the present moment. They come from the shadow, the hidden world within you. The shadow is not evil. It is simply the parts of yourself you've repressed, ignored, or exiled because they felt unacceptable. The anger you swallowed because you were told, good people don't get angry. The sadness you buried because you had to be strong for everyone else. The desires you silenced because they didn't fit the story others wrote for you. All of these pieces didn't vanish. They retreated into the unconscious, waiting for the day they would return. And they always return, not as whispers, but as patterns, that toxic relationship you find yourself in again and again. The sudden fear that paralyzes you just as things start going well. The self-sabotage that ruins opportunities right when you felt ready. These are not coincidences. They are the shadow, speaking through repetition, demanding to be seen. Ancient myths echo this truth. The Greeks told of Orpheus descending into Hades, the realm of shadows, to rescue what was lost. In Mesopotamian myth, the goddess Inanna journeyed into the underworld, stripped bare at every gate, forced to confront her shadow before she could return renewed. Even in Dante's Divine Comedy, the pilgrim must walk through the darkness of hell before rising into paradise. Across cultures, the story is the same. The path to wholeness runs through the underworld of the self, but most people resist this descent. We try to stay in the light, in control, safe from the mess we've hidden away. We keep busy, distracted, armored, yet the unconscious doesn't dissolve because you ignore it. It adapts. It begins to whisper in dreams, to manifest in unexplained anxiety, to sabotage relationships, to erupt in sudden outbursts that leave you wondering, where did that come from? This is why awakening feels so destabilizing. Because to truly awaken is to meet your shadow, to open the doors you've kept locked, to look at the parts of yourself you swore you'd never face. It is terrifying, yes, but it is also liberating, for what you face loses its power over you. What you refuse to face controls you. History gives us countless examples. Leaders who refuse to face their inner demons often unleashed them on the world. Emperors consumed by paranoia, kings undone by envy, generals destroyed by pride. But those who dared to face their shadows, think of Marcus Aurelius writing of his own flaws in Meditations, or Gandhi acknowledging his failures openly, found a power deeper than any throne could grant. Their strength was not in perfection, but in presence. And here is the paradox. Your shadow, the very thing you fear, holds the key to your wholeness. Inside the anger lies your boundary. Inside the grief lies your love. Inside the fear lies your longing for freedom. Jung called this process integration, not destroying the shadow, but embracing it, learning from it, weaving it back into the fabric of your being. You don't become whole by rejecting what you are. You become whole by gathering every part of yourself, the broken, the bright, the hidden, the raw, and saying, you belong. And perhaps this is what life has been leading you toward all along. Not perfection, not invincibility, but integration. To stop running from the shadow and, at last, to walk with it. Carl Jung gave a name to this journey: individuation. It sounds clinical, almost sterile, but its meaning is anything but. Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. Not the self shaped by survival, not the role society assigned you, not the mask you wear to belong, but the authentic essence that has been waiting beneath it all. Most people never begin this journey. Why? Because it demands sacrifice. It asks you to strip away the identities you've spent years building, to let go of the polished persona that earned you praise, the version of yourself crafted to avoid rejection. Individuation requires a symbolic death before it grants you new life. In ancient China, Taoist philosophy spoke of the harmony between yin and yang, the union of opposites, light and dark, male and female, strength and softness. In Native American traditions, the medicine wheel represented balance among the four directions, each carrying different elements of life that must be acknowledged. These teachings echoed what Jung would later formalize. To be whole, we must reconcile the contradictions within us. And yet, reconciliation is rarely painless. Imagine peeling away the skin of an identity you've worn for decades. It hurts. It leaves you raw, exposed. This is why Jung often compared individuation to alchemy. The medieval alchemists weren't just obsessed with turning lead into gold. Their writings were symbolic guides to transforming the heavy, base parts of the psyche into something luminous. Individuation is the soul's alchemy, taking the lead of wounds, shadows, and false selves, and forging them into the gold of authenticity. But here is the catch. The world may not applaud you for it. In fact, it may resist. Families expect you to remain the obedient child. Workplaces reward conformity. Cultures pressure you to uphold traditions even when they suffocate your spirit. Individuation, then, is an act of quiet rebellion. To step outside the script written for you and begin writing your own. History is filled with those who dared this path. Siddhartha Gautama, who left the palace to seek truth as the Buddha. Teresa of Avila, who turned inward in mystic contemplation against the rigid dogmas of her age. Even Martin Luther, standing before emperors and declaring, "Here I stand, I can do no other." Each of them choosing wholeness over approval, truth over safety. And perhaps this is what your soul longs for as well. To no longer fracture yourself just to be accepted. To no longer bury the parts of you that don't fit. To no longer measure your worth against roles you never chose. Individuation doesn't mean becoming perfect. Jung insisted it was about becoming whole. Wholeness doesn't exile your anger, your grief, your shame. It welcomes them. It doesn't deny your joy or your love. It integrates them. To individuate is to see yourself as a mosaic. Every broken shard belonging, every shadow necessary, every light essential. And here lies the quiet miracle. Once you stop rejecting parts of yourself, the world loses its power to use them against you. If you make peace with your fear, criticism cannot paralyze you. If you embrace your vulnerability, betrayal cannot shatter you. When you stand in your wholeness, the world may wound you, but it cannot unmake you. This is why Jung called individuation not just a psychological process, but a sacred task. It is the journey each human being is secretly called to walk, to become not the strongest, not the most admired, not the most successful, but the most whole. And maybe, just maybe, that is the path you are standing on now. Suffering is not punishment. It is initiation. This is the truth so few are willing to accept because it defies everything we are taught. From childhood we are told suffering is a mistake, a failure, something to avoid at all costs. But Jung and the wisdom of countless traditions reminds us suffering is not the end of the path. It is the door into it. In ancient rites of passage, pain was never meaningless. Among the Lakota, young men fasted and prayed alone for days in the wilderness, waiting for visions that would shape their adulthood. In the Spartan Agoge, boys endured brutal trials not to destroy them, but to transform them into warriors who could carry the weight of their society. In indigenous Amazonian tribes, initiates were sometimes asked to wear gloves filled with bullet ants. The excruciating pain was not cruelty, but a baptism of resilience. In every culture, pain was seen as a threshold. You enter as one person and emerge as another. Our modern world has forgotten this. We medicate pain, bury it under distractions, avoid it as if it serves no purpose. But avoidance only prolongs the inevitable. Because pain does not vanish when ignored, it changes shape. It becomes anxiety, apathy, rage. It hides in the body as tension, in the mind as restlessness, in the heart as emptiness. The pain we refuse to face will always find another way to speak. And yet, within pain lies something sacred. When the old self begins to collapse, when the identity you clung to dissolves, something new struggles to be born. This is why so many spiritual traditions speak of dying before you die. A symbolic death, an inner collapse, is necessary for rebirth. Think of the phoenix, that mythic bird consumed by flames only to rise from its ashes. Think of Jesus, who passed through crucifixion before resurrection. Think of the countless heroes in myth, from Gilgamesh to Odysseus, who endured loss, grief, and despair before returning home transformed. Pain has always been the furnace of renewal, and so it is for you. When everything breaks, when the roles you played no longer fit, when the masks crack, you are invited into that sacred furnace, to let go of what no longer serves you, to allow the death of illusions, of false strength, of borrowed identities. Of course, this hurts. It may be the deepest pain you have ever known. Letting go always feels like death, because in a way, it is. But what dies is not your essence. What dies is the prison that held it. Collective history bears this truth as well. After the devastation of the Black Death in the 14th century, Europe was scarred by loss. Entire families vanished, cities were emptied. But from the ashes of that suffering came profound change, the weakening of feudalism, the rise of humanism, the slow birth of the Renaissance. Pain cracked open the old world and made way for something new. Humanity itself has always been reshaped in the crucible of suffering. And so too are you. Your suffering may feel senseless now, unbearable, even cruel. But what if it is also initiation? What if your very breaking is the threshold through which your true self must walk? The world tells you to fear pain, to avoid it, to silence it. But Jung tells us invite it in, not to glorify suffering, but to honor the message it carries. For within pain lies your transformation. The seed of rebirth is always hidden in the wound. After the descent, after the shadow, after the shattering, comes something quieter, steadier, more luminous, consciousness. Not the kind of awareness that floats above life, detached and serene, but the kind that roots you so deeply into truth that nothing outside of you can truly undo you anymore. Because here is the secret. Nothing external has the power to destroy you unless it finds an echo inside you. Rejection stings because it touches an old story of being unworthy. Betrayal cuts because it lands in the wound of abandonment. Criticism pierces because it mirrors the harsh voice you already carry within. Once you see this, you are no longer at the mercy of the world. This is not invincibility in the old sense, not armor, not walls, not numbness. Real strength is not the absence of pain, it is the presence of clarity. It is standing in the storm with open eyes, feeling the rain, even the sting, and knowing this too is part of me, but it does not define me. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." Acceptance does not mean passivity. It does not mean tolerating cruelty or abandoning boundaries. It means you stop waging war against your own inner landscape. You stop believing that life must be controlled in order for you to be safe. Instead, you realize safety is born from presence, from integration, from awareness. History gives us luminous examples of this truth. Viktor Frankl, imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, stripped of everything, family, freedom, dignity, discovered that the final human freedom is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. Nelson Mandela, after 27 years in prison, emerged without bitterness, his clarity sharper than any blade, his presence reshaping a nation. Their resilience was not forged in denial, but in deep awareness of suffering, transformed into wisdom. And maybe that is the path calling you now, to stop running, to stop pretending, to stop hardening. Instead, to awaken. To choose consciousness as your shield, not to block out life, but to live it fully. Because once you begin to see clearly, the masks lose their hold. The shadows no longer frighten you. The pain still arrives, yes, but it passes through you instead of owning you. You are no longer tossed like a leaf by every gust of wind. You are rooted, whole, awake. And this awakening is not a single moment. It is a daily decision, a choice again and again to meet yourself honestly, to sit with your wounds instead of burying them, to walk with your shadow instead of denying it, to speak truth instead of wearing masks. You may tremble, you may falter, but you will be alive, truly alive. So if something inside you stirred while listening, if you felt even a flicker of recognition, then know this: you are already on the path. You do not need to be unbreakable. You need only to be real. And real means cracked, feeling, fragile, strong, broken, healing, whole, all at once. The world does not need more polished masks. It does not need more unbreakable facades. It needs more human souls, present, vulnerable, awake. So place your hand on your heart. Take a breath. Whisper to yourself, even if no one else hears, I choose awareness. I choose truth. I choose to live as myself. And let this be the beginning, not of a perfect life, but of a real one. Because consciousness is not just liberation, it is the quiet revolution that changes everything.